likely that this was enclosed because it was a servant's area and a delivery space, so they wanted to be able to get their groceries and things like that without having to slip on ice or trudging through the snow that poured through over here. So each house is built within a mirror image of one another, and a lot of the things that you'll see over here also exist over in the West house. There are some stylistic differences, however, that you'll notice. Each house is built with a 6-door built-in refrigerator. A giant ice block would go in the top compartment, and groceries would be delivered in that second compartment that would allow for access without having to go into the house. In the kitchen, where we'll be in just a couple seconds, there's 3 other doors that allow for the cook and Caroline, who live in this side of the house, to reorganize the items as desired. And even though it is formally recognized as an ice box now, like we've got right over here, this actually came from Michael, who lived in the West house, original house, which would have been over on Milton Road, where the Walgreens is today. It is referred to as a refrigerator inside on the instructions. Right, so this is the kitchen. They did have a cook, though Caroline herself did love to cook and bake. So this actually is her stove. It came from their original house, and they brought it over. If you notice, it's rather short. The legs were chopped off on the bottom because she was 4'11". So there was running water, electricity, and heat in this house. And we have this water heater that was installed afterwards. The cook would wake up very early in the morning and start it with coal and things like that. There's also a furnace down in the basement. Something about the arts and crafts style is that it's known for its storage, but that's kind of missing from the kitchen. So I imagine you're wondering where all of their items would go. So typically things would be kept on the tables like we've got right there. So even this kind of cabinet was a little bit unique for this design. They actually have this cook's pantry right over here where they can store their flour and meat and have a bit more counter space. They hosted tons and tons of dinner parties, so they would probably use this a lot for those occasions. This is the dining room, and its oval construction is designed so that you can talk at a normal octave and not have to raise your voice and everybody can hear you. The table was designed to match this oval shape, but the unique thing about it is that it also is designed so that wherever you sit, no matter who you're looking for, you can look at them without having to lean forward. They did host a lot of dinner parties, so those were the things they sort of were keeping in mind when they were designing this room. Timothy sat there. He was 6'3", so that's definitely probably his chair. We think that Caroline probably sat right over here, as there's a servant's call button right underneath where she could have tapped it for the next course.
Model B Steinway grand piano, and it was given to Caroline by Tim when they moved in this house in 1904. And even though it's over 100 years old, let me show you just a little demonstration of how it sounds. I haven't been here since 1940.
We've got quite a few stickly pieces throughout the house, and they're still actually manufacturing furniture today. Some of the pieces right next to the entrance of the visitor center were actually stickly pieces, but they're more modern versions. So you'll see some of the older designs here as I point them out throughout the house. This here was Timothy's favorite chair, in case you couldn't tell. It's very worn in. He typically tried not to work away from home, but this was his space that he could do that if he needed to. We've got the Mac cabinet, and you're starting to see the collection of books that they owned. They helped create the first library by donating 1,000 books of each of their collections. So there's about 4,000 in total in the house. for the family, and it was generally where they spent their evening time together as a family. They also hosted balls and dinner parties and things like that in this room as well. Matt was the first brother to come out here to Flagstaff, and he came out here to be the lumber mill's general manager. About a few years after working there, he convinced Michael, his youngest brother, to come join him as well. So Michael was originally studying to become a Jesuit priest back in Chicago, where they were originally from, but he unfortunately contracted tuberculosis. So Matt convinced him to come out here for its high and dry climate, and lo and behold, it worked miracles because he lived until he was in his 60s, though he did never become a priest. Timothy was the final brother to come out here, and Nell never did come out here because she was busy in Chicago looking after 9 of her 11 children.
Didn't she look after the other two?
They passed away. Right. Another big influential family out here was the Babbitt family. And if you've been downtown, you've seen Babbitt Ford, the Babbitt Exchange, and they're even still relevant in politics today. At the time, and even still today, they owned the ranching business, and they also dipped their toes into mercantile. So, Caroline and Elizabeth and Alice happened to be cousins of the Babbitts, and they hailed from Ohio. So they came to visit them rather frequently, and it was on one such visit that Caroline met Timothy, and after a few weeks, they courted each other. Together they fell in love, and they had their 2 daughters, and they lived in the East House. Elizabeth and her mother were convinced after a year of Caroline being out here to join her. And unfortunately there was a mix-up at the train station and nobody was sent to pick them up, so Michael was volunteered, and that's where he met Elizabeth for the first time. And after a couple weeks of hanging out together, they too got married and they had 5 children and they lived in the West House. Alice came out here as well, and though she did live with them in the West House, she never did get married herself. She helped with taking care of the children, and she also helped with their education. Purchased it for $145,000 at 6% interest, and he paid it off in about 3 years. If you do the math, it's about $3 million today, so it's really expensive. About 10 years after he purchased it, he decided to sell his shares to his brothers. He went to go work for the mining business in California. We hear a little bit about him after that through correspondences between family members through letters, but we don't hear much about him. And it was renamed the Arizona Lumber and Timber Company shortly after. So, at its highest peak, it employed 700 men, which was about a little less than half the population of Flagstaff at the time. So it did really well for them. That's why they were able to build this duplex. Bedroom here. We believe they had 2 servants, namely from the context clues of 2 different closets. We don't know if they slept in a singular bed. They might have had 2 separate twin beds, but we have blended some of the furniture over from Michael's house to give you kind of the fullest experience. Some of the things you're starting to see in here, as you saw downstairs, are still tied to that arts and crafts style. So we've got the dark green walls, the dartboard floors, the nature-oriented curtains, and things like that. Big task that Charles Whittlesey had when he was creating this house was bringing light and air into it, because while they did have all of those amenities, they didn't have air conditioning. So these windows are installed in quite a few of the rooms so that there's lots of light and air. You can open them in the summertime to allow for a nice pleasant summer breeze. And they also installed these nifty transom windows so that the door can be closed to maintain privacy, and the window will remain open so that there's still that airflow going through. I don't think they had live-in servants after World War I, as the live-in servant industry started to deplete and die down a little bit around then. The pink room that we saw right over in the corner there belonged to the cook, and as I mentioned downstairs, she had a greater list of responsibilities, having to wake up very early in the morning to get things started, so that's probably why she had her own room. There's also the linen closet in the very back. You can see that second laundry chute that leads down into the basement, so we fortunately didn't have to climb down those steep stairs with a giant basket of laundry. And there's also the trunk room. So family was very well traveled and they were very active in their daily lives. So when they had to travel, they did have to travel for months at a time. So those trunks made it so that they could do that, and that was where they kept them in the meantime. It was also doubled as a nursery and a playroom at different points in time.
Which is upstairs, the trunk room.
Right over there, Chris. We can take another look at it as we pass back through. We'll get a chance to look at all of the rooms up here, but we're going to start in the guest room first.
What is this? Yeah.
An electrical cabinet. So, before we talk about this room, I'm going to talk a little bit about the light wall that was just out there that we saw with the giant window at the top. So, that was designed to bring light into the center of the house, which was a big challenge because obviously windows aren't going to reach the light all the way over there. So, they installed the window at the top, and in the very roof of the attic, there are holes that allow for light to pour through as well as airflow. They can be propped open in the summertime to allow for a summer breeze. We hear stories of the grandchildren laying on top of those wooden slats to eavesdrop on guests down below or to cause general mischief. Those wooden slats were installed as a safety measure. There were lots of children running around the house, and they certainly didn't want them dangling from the second floor. And Anna was about 3 years old when they moved in, so they just wanted to be careful about that sort of thing. This room here was used as a guest room on this side of the house, so it's likely that it was used as a normal bedroom on the other house, just due to spatial differences. More people lived on that side of the house, but wouldn't have been able to do that. This furniture comes from Michael's side of the house, and the focal point is this dresser here. So, it was designed by Ole Solberg, who had never made furniture a day in his life before. He was a carpenter, and Michael wanted to convince him to make the piece, and he did. And the unique thing about it is that it's made with no metal in it whatsoever. So it's all wooden, and it's all fit together really nicely. The Riordan brothers owned the lumber mill, and attached to it the first electric company. They helped in the creation of the first hospital. They helped with the first library, and they helped design the first Catholic church. So they did all of these great things for Flagstaff. But what do you think Timothy thinks his greatest accomplishment is? Heard of Lake Mary. It's named after Mary on this side of the house. So he was the one that found the valley, dammed it up for snowmelt and water, rainfall. And I think the reason he thinks and claimed that it was his greatest accomplishment is because even though he passed away in the 40s, we still use up to 40% of it, depending on the season, as our water supply today. So it superseded all of his businesses and things like that, and we still use it. So that they wouldn't have used the downstairs bathroom as their own bathroom until much later, because that was the servants' bathroom. So they would have had to trudge all the way upstairs to use the bathroom. I would have just caved and used the servants' bathroom. So this is Anna's room. She was also very active, similar to her father. She was tall as well. She was 5'10". She's the tallest girl here in the back of her graduation photo. And she actually attended a 4-year college in Manhattanville, New York, where she attended Sacred Heart. She achieved a 4-year degree in rhetoric. She enjoyed talking about plays and literature. She played tennis and golf. She hiked a lot and got her hiking boots in. She also definitely roller skated throughout the house because the roads weren't paved at the time, so there's probably lots of scuff marks. And I would have definitely enjoyed roller skating in Caroline's room because it was the perfect size for like a skating rink. We know a lot of that through correspondence between